Mike Leigh is a seven-time Oscar nominee whose films have included Secrets and Lies, Topsy-Turvy, Vera Drake. He's back again this year with the incredible new film, Hard Truths. Mike, congratulations on this film. You worked, obviously, very famously with Marianne Jean-Baptiste on Secrets and Lies, and before that on stage. This is your first film with her in 30-odd years. Why was it time now for you to reconnect creatively with her?
Well, it was overdue. I mean, we've been talking about it for ages. And in fact, we were going to make the film in 2020, but the pandemic put paid to that. She's a great actress. She's a great friend, but she lives in LA. So we had to get her over to London and, look after her for a few months. But she's great. She's a consummate character actor. She's really brilliant at characters. She's got a great sense of humor. She's got a great compassion. And I needed to finally get round to working with her again. And she needed it too. And we agreed. And so there we go.
Did you know? I mean, like, I guess for you, in terms of her, as obviously your process is like legendary at this point, but in terms of like, did anything surprise you about her coming back to, like, obviously probably seen her and, like you said, like, she's a great character actor. She's done obviously countless projects, but did anything surprise you about her now working with her over, like, that you maybe didn't even realize in terms of her performance?
Nothing surprised me because, I mean, we worked together. First of all, we worked together on a play, on a stage play,
Mhm.
back in 1993, when she was, 2 or 3 years out of drama school. And she was great then. And then a couple of years later, we did Secrets and Lies. And she was a young actress. Now she's a middle-aged actress with a great deal of experience, not only of movies and of the business, but of life. She's raised her daughters and all that, and she's very grounded. So nothing surprised me. But the fact is, she has matured in the best possible way as an actor because she's matured as a person, and she's a great. Her observation is fantastic. I mean, she's got a great sense of detail and of the foibles of life.
You mentioned Pansy is obviously I would say a difficult character. I've seen you discuss her, and I think you said something like she is hard work and she knows she is hard work. And I thought that second point is obviously like the key, I think, especially as the film kind of gets into its second half. I think really like the key to, I think, the film's power is that she has this self-awareness maybe about the way she is, but can't really do anything about that. And I guess, like, was that just that did that naturally kind of occur throughout in the process of creating a character, or was that always the goal that you were kind of reaching for?
No, there was no goal because, as you know, probably we make these films up of mine. We discover what the film is
Mhm.
by the process of making it. So, I mean, it's not quite accurate to talk about. It's not. I said there's no goal. Of course, there is all. As a dramatist, as a storyteller, as a filmmaker. I mean, I've got obviously as it evolves, I have a sense of what needs to be going on and how the audience will or won't go with it or sympathize with it or reject it and all of those things. So in that sense, yes, but it wasn't a prerequisite before we started. It came out organically of the process of discovering the film, discovering the growth of the characters, their interrelationship, and therefore the substance, the crisis, the argument, if you like, of the film.
Do you always, I mean, like, I'm assuming the answer is yes, but do you always have like that kind of, I mean, you have like empathy for even characters like Pansy who are so difficult, like you can't really do it any other way, I'd imagine, right?
I mean, that in the end, in the best possible way, is a profoundly personal question, which is that I make films about how I feel, come out of how I feel about life, and we make films about individuals, and we explore characters and bring characters into existence in a very three-dimensional way. And if you look at people three-dimensionally, and not merely as ciphers in a two-dimensional drama, then you can only look at them in from all sorts of angles, and that inevitably leads to finding ways of being sympathetic towards them, however
Mhm.
much of a pain in the ass they may actually be. And Pansy is definitely in that department.
It's like like something stuck in your shoe, you know?
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, it would be there. There would be no point if you made a film about someone with Pansy's condition and you didn't really grow or take the audience anywhere. I mean, but we don't. It's not, as you know, you see in the movie. It's
Mhm.
not done by kind of black and white pointers. It's a gradual thing, and everybody reacts to it in a different way. But what is for sure is you can't help eventually starting to, however much you may resent it or resist it, you find sympathy for her because you're seeing her in the round. You're seeing her as a real person.
You could do that with all, I mean, I think just in general with your work, obviously, but in this film specifically, you do that with all these characters. I was like, I could have watched a movie about Kurtley. I could have watched a movie about Chantel, like, obviously Pansy. I was like looking Luella Gideon's character, who's in the salon, I think, talking about her suitor, who's like a cab driver, right? Or all of those, every one of these people, I was like, wow, I'd watch a whole, almost would consider watching a whole movie about just them too. And I guess like, is it how much discipline does it take for you to just remain focused on the story and not, fleshing out, like not diverting to those fleshed out characters that you've created?
Good question, but I mean that's the job of the storyteller, I mean, the point is this: just because they're minor characters or relatively minor characters, and in some cases they are very minor characters, that's absolutely no reason why you shouldn't see them as three-dimensionally as all the other characters, because it's in the nature of the way we're looking at the world, is we're looking at the world, we're looking at real people. And therefore, it doesn't matter whether so there's no question of being tempted to take a minor character and suddenly make the whole film about that character, because apart from anything else, there are all kinds of practical reasons why that would be impossible. But that's not what we're there to do. But obviously, it's important, and I'm glad you said what you have, because what you're saying, I hope, is that all the characters, however minor they are as three-dimensional and rounded as the central characters, and that is what when we work it, because we work with no script, because that we start with no script, and such as the script is merely that we script through rehearsal, starting with improvisations, and that is preceded by ca making characters drawn from real people that the actors know. And I do that right across the board with even the most minor characters, so everybody's kind of grounded.
Do you have like, when you're looking for actors, then do you have like a specific thing you're looking for to know that they're up to the task of this?
Absolutely. Not There are very good actors who can't do this sort of thing. First and foremost, I have to work with character actors, which is to say people that don't play themselves, but are good at and want to play real people out there in the street, and are versatile and can do that. Secondly, I can only work with intelligent actors, and not all actors are intelligent. And thirdly, they have to have actors with a sense of humor, because if they haven't got a sense of humor, forget it. So those are the three criteria, basically. And
Very
obviously,
good.
I conduct quite rigorous auditions to make
Mhm.
sure we don't make any mistakes.
You mentioned before about this was like you were maybe going to do this in 2020. The pandemic delayed it. I know you've said, I guess it's not like the pandemic was not part and parcel to like the development of the story, the character. But obviously, I think people when they're watching the film will think of the pandemic. It's obviously, I think it's referenced once certainly, and just in general because of where we live now, this is like what you're thinking of. I was wondering this: do you think, and maybe you can't even answer this, but do you think people will look at the movie differently further away we get from the pandemic, and maybe still get something out of it, but what is the idea of it like being like thinking of it in terms of a post-pandemic central to now versus how people might experience it 5 years from now, or maybe would have experienced to it 10 years ago?
I It never occurred to me at all that this was in any way a post-pandemic film. It is post-pandemic because it's set in the 2020s and that's post-pandemic. But there's nothing. It is not about that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there is a 1.5 incidental references. There are one and a half incidental references to the pandemic in the film, but we could have made this film in principle 10 or 20 or 30 years ago or more, and it would be the same issue. There have always been pansies, people with those kinds of relationships, those kinds of conditions, those kinds of hang-ups, etc., etc., etc. It is nothing to do with the pandemic, and therefore, I don't think people, even now, when they really are into what the film is about, are really thinking about the pandemic. Of course, you could have a discussion about what would have I mean, Pansy spends a lot of time locked up in our house anyway. So obviously you could have a discussion, and we did, about, what it would have been like during the pandemic, but it isn't about that.
Right. I think, yeah, like you said, like I think people watch it and it's like, especially like you said, like it's a very universal film. I think so. I think like it'll be carried on, throughout. I could talk about this with you for a long time, but we do have to wrap up. Mike Leigh, thank you so much for doing this. Hard Truths is the film. You can see it later this year from Bleecker Street. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Thank you.